Hello everybody and welcome to another Social Blueprint interview where we highlight people in the community who you may or may not know. But today, you may not know Daniel, but you certainly know his products because unless you don't go to Kohl's, Woolworths, or Chemist Warehouse, which is basically every person in Australia, that means you would have had exposure to his products. And we are joined today by Daniel Kitay, founder of Funday Sweets, and we're going to discuss all about it. But before we get over to you, Daniel, you know the drill, everybody. Like, subscribe, sign up to Social Blueprint. We are known for our interviews, but we are so much more. Events, you want to know about them? Well, we have the largest calendar in Melbourne. Help, NDIS, aged care. There are so many resources and they are absolutely free. And that is a great transition spot to talk about having it all, Daniel, because there's an expression that you can't have it all in life. But in your case, you have a thriving business and a passion that really matches it. Maybe talk to us a little bit about it.
What a great introduction. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I think in most cases you can't have it all,
Right.
which is true. In the case of Funday, I think it's such a pleasure to run a business that offers a really better for you product that's low in sugar and high in fiber and a very natural product, which everyone typically loves, like a lolly and a sweet and
Right.
candy. And I think it's really nice to be able to deliver that sort of product to people, knowing that you're actually giving them something that's beneficial, not harmful. And so in our case at Funday, we think we've got it all.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it comes from a place of passion, because just back up for a second, talk to us maybe a little bit about how the idea was formed years and years ago through your own journey.
Yeah. I think the idea was sort of deep rooted in me generally, back from being a child born in Perth and growing up and having a crazy love for food and beverage, and it still continues to this day.
Right.
The challenge with me being a younger child and not really being aware of the health and wellness and the I guess the importance of it was that I just stacked on weight.
Right.
And really only after school I realised that it was not that healthy,
Right.
and I really needed to start looking after myself. And I think naturally what I did at that time was I cut out sugar and cut out all the things that I really loved, which is lollies and chocolates.
Right.
Started exercising a little bit, and lo and behold, I lost a whole lot of weight.
Right.
The challenge in all of that is that you weren't eating the things that you love. So there was this huge deficit in the enjoyment and you're feeling
Misery.
amazing on one hand and then miserable on the other hand. Through professional life, I guess I always wanted to start my own business and run my own business.
Right.
And I was involved in a number of businesses as a lawyer, but also in a commercial capacity in businesses.
Right.
And in the previous businesses before Funday was more in the supermarket and pharmacy world. And that's where sort of the world collided between what was deep rooted in me, what I was missing,
Right.
and actually having the practical experience to, attempt to go and start a business. And I guess that's how it all sort of began.
Right, that's incredible how you brought up there the intersection. Now, Funday, for people that don't know, just talk to us about the products itself.
Sure. Funday is really solving the need for people that really want to engage with lollies and confectionery in a really fun, meaningful, and better for you way. So the reason why Funday existed was because a lot of people are not currently consuming lollies, or they are, and then there's a sense of guilt at the end of it. And that's a really average experience for people to have constantly, and actually just gets worse as you get older. And what Funday really delivers is the opportunity to have something that's as tasty. It's got around 91% less sugar than the leading confectionery brands in market.
Right.
And it does that by actually substituting the refined sugars out of lollies,
Right.
and putting in products and ingredients like tapioca starch and chicory root fiber, which are essentially prebiotic fibers.
Okay.
It's not as sweet as sugar. It doesn't deliver the same psychological the same surge as sugar, but we do top it up with stevia, or we have natural colours and flavours. They come, our greens from spirulina, the peaches from paprika. So it all comes from natural sources. We also recognise that people, when they were opening a bag of confectionery, were eating significant amounts of it, and we're really unable to control serving size.
Right, one leads to four.
Yeah, well, exactly. And a serving size is really two, I think it's two frogs.
Okay.
Or something like that, even worse. And so you're never going to stop at that. And just
No.
the amount of sugar is just, incredible. And so what was designed, which was really a first in Australia, was to actually portion control a bag to 50 grams and say, you can open it, you can eat it all. You don't need to feel guilty. The product is
Right.
good for you. And you know that we're giving you somewhere between like 10 and 20 pieces of confectionery.
Right.
It's satisfying. It's got dietary fiber in it, so it actually fills you up. And you can dispose of it at the end of it, and you don't need to think you've overeaten or anything like that. So we just simplified the whole process psychologically, but also in terms of just delivering a much better product as well.
Right. And then I want to ask you, how long did it take you to think about this? Like, take us back to step one of nothing.
Well,
I'm always interested in the story.
yeah, I think the story really, like I said, was there was a professional life before Funday.
Yes.
Just before Funday, I was working at the world's largest vitamin and supplement brand. It's a Chinese publicly listed company.
Right.
And I had a great job at head of sales and marketing. It was fantastic.
Okay.
The pay was fantastic. I was learning a lot. But there were lots of things that were just not fulfilling in terms of what I was keen to do. I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to create a team. I wanted to create a culture. And I took a couple of days off. This was now in, I think, 2019.
Right.
And I actually, we're talking about Whole Foods and some of the retailers before. I actually went on a trip to LA for 2 days and to London for 2 days.
Okay.
And the whole idea was just to explore the retail markets, understand what products were trending at the time. Meanwhile, this is pre-COVID, so there was a lot of activity globally in terms of food and beverage. And I went with an empty suitcase and bought up, and I was really there to check anything out in health and wellness. So this was the time that White Claw, which is a seltzer drink, had just launched in the States, and I was like, oh, I could go and launch like a, seltzer. I was really open.
And the valuations were crazy.
Yeah. And I was really open to anything, as long as it was interesting and meaningful for me.
Right.
I bought kids products and healthy kids chocolate products, and I stumbled across a lot of products that were actually using similar sugar replacements in their products. And I think the sort of bells in my head went off and said, actually, we can strip out the sugar in lollies.
Right.
This is a huge category in Australia. It's like $1.5 billion. It's all dominated by full sugar brands like Nestle and Mondelez that are, the key owners of these brands. What if we could substitute these ingredients for sugar? Went to London for 2 days, really didn't find much at all. It was pretty uninspiring, but at least I knew that there wasn't anything going on there. I came back. Within about 2 weeks, I'd quit my job. I was fully convinced that this was going to be the idea for me. And fortunately, I was also going on honeymoon at that point. So it was a really nice exit into, going on a honeymoon with no responsibilities and having a lot of fun. However, on that honeymoon, I started engaging with suppliers.
Already?
Well, I was at the airport and I had an hour, so I'd reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for some tapioca fiber, or I'm looking for some chicory root fiber. And when I came back, I really wanted some of these ingredients to be waiting for me because I needed to start. I wasn't going to get paid anymore.
Right.
So there was, a real rocket under this for me personally. Anyway, I came back from that trip, and really the next 6 months was about product development. So trying it out in the kitchen, testing out different formulations. A gelatin-based formulation is very different behavior to a vegan product. Significantly different. I didn't know any of this. I was YouTubing recipes. I was going on Google. There was no ChatGPT. They could probably tell you recipes for this stuff.
Absolutely. And you could ask it for substitutes.
Yeah, I could. And so I really just had to work it out by myself. Like, I love food. I tried out for MasterChef 10 years ago. I always have just been passionate about it. I was also very good at science at school, and I did chemistry in year 12. And so just the idea of really getting behind the hood of the ingredients and the ratios and the percentages and impact on acid, on gelatin, or when you needed to put things in so that you had a good product was really interesting for me personally. And that's really how the process started.
Yeah, I want to go a little bit of a segue for a second here. Is your background, so you were already in the retail space, if you will. You already had some interest in chemistry. For people out there, a lot of people are going to watch this and be like, I want to start a business, but I don't know what I want to do. Having that experience, can you just talk to us a little bit about how has it helped you?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I wanted to run a business forever. I was always like always pitching people around me different ideas, and they would be like, Daniel, that's a terrible idea. That's a horrible idea. Don't quit your job and do that. It was like, come home one day, I was like, you know what, we should invent, this product or this, and my wife would just be like, that's so bad. Like, don't do that. And then I think what happened is I would go and speak to mentors and friends and people and be like, do you have businesses? Do you have thoughts about what I can do? I was sort of very impatient. I was getting a bit aggro about not having something.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing was actually getting involved in industry. And once you're involved in a business or a line of work or an industry or something where you really understand it, you start to see the inefficiencies and opportunities. And it happens whether, if you're working in oil and gas, you'd be seeing opportunities in oil and gas. You might not see what's going on. But I was working in vitamins, supplements, supermarkets, pharmacy. You start to see data that's saying, well, gummies are going really well. And you start to look at that and you start to say, well, there's a gap here. This sounds really interesting. But you would not have known that but for being in that environment and in that profession and in that, in that space. And so I think, for me personally, being involved in business and not just rushing into like an idea was the best thing ever. And I think when people come to me and they say like, what business should I get in? I'm like, well, where do you currently work? Like what opportunities exist? What's your edge? What do you know more than anyone else? And what are the opportunities that you're seeing now that no one is tackling that are a really good size of the prize? And often it's like, oh yeah, I work in IT and I realize like it's super inefficient when this happens. I'm like, well, create a product around that. You understand it. You know all the stakeholders in it already. It's a much easier thing to get involved in than something completely foreign and unknown.
Because even as you said, you call the supplier in an airport on a random 45 minutes.
Yep.
Well, newsflash, most of us just don't even know who a supplier is to call.
Yep.
And it sounds like you had them right on your speed dial.
I didn't actually. In this case, with these ingredients, I didn't. It was literally Google.
Oh, okay.
But I knew what needed to be done. I knew the ingredients that needed to be in there. I knew where it would be sitting in store. I knew how it would be packaged up and marketed. So having that knowledge, then, you're never going to get everything, in your lap. But it was like, okay, I know what I need. At least you know the starting point and you can go and sort of reach out and start finding those things. And like Google is, anyone can start a business because you've got Google, YouTube, ChatGPT. Anything is possible now, more than ever before.
Right. And now let's fast forward. Funday, your products are everywhere. I want to ask you what is one of the, now you've explained the product, you've explained the fit and so forth, but getting distribution, getting into stores, not so easy, or is it easier than you think?
Very hard, really hard. In Funday's case, the first customer was actually Chemist Warehouse. And even that, I was working with them in the previous role and there was still a significant amount of doubt. No one had put in a product in market that was a 50-gram bag that costs like anywhere, maybe $2 was like the going rate or something like that because the ingredients cost made sense to sell it for $2.
Sure.
So no one had put a premium position, single bag format in retail ever in Australia. And so there's a lot of question marks in terms of like why.
What's the addressable market even?
Yeah, well, like it's never been done. So there's a lot of apprehension. What really happened was I managed to essentially get a purchase order from Chemist Warehouse before I submitted a purchase order to the manufacturer, which is very rare. Typically, you sort of have to go the other way around.
Build an enable.
Well, that's it. But the problem with food is you've got a shelf life. And so as soon as it's made, it starts to tick down the shelf life. And if, say, it's 15 months, it was getting made in Switzerland for a whole variety of reasons. Let's say you get it at 12 months. Then the retailer says that they'll only accept it if it's got, more than X% of the shelf life. So you've got a very short window.
I did not know that.
So there's a lot of risk in food.
Right.
I think I had to sign some pretty heavy contracts to say that if it didn't work, that I would have to basically buy back all of the stock.
Right.
To even get that amount of money, it was like putting my house up as collateral. So there's a huge amount of risk that goes into all of it that no one really sees.
Yeah.
So I think, I think if you really want to get into like big retail, that's what you need to do. that doesn't mean it's the only way to get around it. Other businesses are very grassroots. They start at a market
Yes.
in Mornington or wherever it might be, and they build it up and get into a few doors. And
Right.
that's also proven to work at a far lower risk. But the build will take maybe 10 years
Right.
to do it. And I'm an impatient person. And I knew we had a good product. And as soon as it launched, there would be people coming into the market. So it was really important for me to be first to market and really try lock up distribution.
And I'm curious, how long did it take to say, we think we're onto something here? Or are you still wondering?
I think now we're pretty confident. I would say it probably took 2 years before I saw someone actually buy the product off the shelf. Even though I saw the numbers, there was still this sort of disconnect between what I was seeing on paper and on the computer versus what I was actually seeing in real life. Because I just sit in a Woolies store or Chemist Warehouse and I just wait and no one would pick it up. And then I was like, is this really selling, you know?
Right.
But you start to see the numbers and the data source and you're like, okay, it is. And
Right.
I think I've needed a lot of validation over the years to say that this product is actually working and we've got something.
You're insecure, what can I say?
Yeah, and I think I think an element of the success is being insecure about it because it makes you work a lot harder.
Yes.
And like the products that we put out 4 years ago, like in a way, I'm a bit ashamed that those are the products that came out because I know where we are today and all the work that's evolved. And that's just this mindset of just like continuous improvement and always trying to do it better and better. But in terms of when we knew we were on a winner, I think we could tell signs were really positive the whole way.
Yeah.
But there were so many other points along the way where I was like, this is done. I might as well like shut shop because of so many issues that arise in the business, whether it's retail or it was COVID and we had COVID shipping issues. And then there was a ship blocking the Suez Canal for like months while we were going to Woolies. Like there's just, plus foreign exchange was going banana. There were so many times I was like, this is just never going to work.
Yeah.
So you're sort of, it's really just a bit of a roller coaster ride.
And then that's exactly, and then did, in a way, one contract lead to another contract, so to speak?
Yeah.
Because now we see you everywhere, of course.
Yeah. So I think there's an element of like the first retailer is the hardest.
Right.
You're having to prove to them initially that there is an unknown here and you've got to sort of de-risk their position. Once you can create the story around, you know, the incremental growth that you've been able to provide that retailer, because every retailer and any business is looking for incremental growth. Like if you take out one product and put in your product, but there's like net neutral increase, then there's no benefit in them doing that.
Right.
So it's all about return on investment and it's all about the effort that it takes.
Sure.
And so we then started to create a bit of a data story to say, all right, well, every time we put in a product, you're actually earning X percent more, X dollars more per store than you were previously with another product. And that story is very enticing for retailers.
Right, the cost benefit analysis.
The cost benefit of like, if you took out these, because you've got to be mindful, like if you put in a product, something's coming out.
Absolutely.
It's not just like more space, you know, it's supermarkets, incredibly tough. But yes, the data story continued to evolve. The numbers came out. It was supportive. We also started, you know, we say Woolworths is our main grocery player.
Right.
And they only gave us 3 products in 200 stores. And I was super pissed off. I was like, why aren't we getting 1,000 stores?
Right.
But as it so happens, it was like the best thing ever because the capital outlay to fund that and the risk that you don't know what's going to happen is a much safer bet for a founder. And so, you know, every 3-6 months, they would run another review. We'd go and analyze the performance and they would say, cool, let's now give you another 1 product and you're now in 500 stores.
Right.
And now we've got, I think we're going to about 12 or 13 products in 1,000 stores by next month. Actually, this month, May. So you've got to be patient. You've got to be really patient, even though you know that this is the winner.
Right.
You've got to prove everyone else beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah. I also want to ask you about, you know, it takes so much to run a business. On the marketing side, your social media, your marketing, it all looks, in my opinion, fantastic. Is that you or do you have a team?
I will claim credit for maybe the first month of the business in 2020. Like, you know, my wife and I were on Instagram reaching out to influencers, packing, you know, I've got photos at home of us on the floor. My wife's like 8 months pregnant, packing influencer boxes and the real hustle.
Right.
Then, fortunately, I was able to hire some really good people.
Right.
I would say I get presented like what the plan is and I sort of have oversight and get to say whether that's, you know, needs improvement or whether it's great. but for the most part, it's 99% of it's been done by someone else. In terms of the tone of it and the strategy about what we go after and who we go after is sometimes led by me on a sort of on a strategic level, but in terms of the execution and the videos in the office and the stands that you see at the retail is often not me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you find it frankly tough to evaluate their talent because there's such a wide range
Of talent, like actually hiring people?
Yes.
Yeah, I think people are like the hardest part of business actually. And, you know, you've got to roll with the punches, and where you were in the business 4 years ago, 5 years ago to where the business is now actually demands a very different skill set and a very different person. And the business has had to sort of evolve with talent, bring on people that have had more experience in retail or more experience in digital, and bring in those people to help actually train and guide some of the other staff. But yeah, I think every business sort of struggles with people, and particularly if you're a founder, you're impatient. You're very clear about your objectives, and you can be quite hard to deal with at some time. So being self-aware is good, and actually surrounding yourself with people that sort of complement you is critical. And it's been really nice to sort of have some people in the business that sort of are now create some layers in the business. So, you know, sometimes a lot of my comments are more emotional based, like, why are we doing this? It doesn't make sense. But they will have a different view on, you know, there's a trend going live, or there's an opportunity here that we didn't think. So the hardest part of a founder is actually letting go of certain parts of the business. And sometimes I'm so thankful for that. Sometimes it makes me really anxious that I'm not across every single detail. But you manage it in a way, you can do it in really helpful and strategic ways that the staff feel and are not micromanaged, but you're still having control of the outcome. Because fundamentally, if this thing works, it's on me, but if it doesn't work, it's also fully on me. And I take 100% of the gain and 100% of the loss. So you need to be really across all the details, I think, still.
Yeah. I'm curious, and you know, this is primarily a Jewish channel here, and you are from the other side of the country, if you will. But why is it, do you think, that Jewish people disproportionately want to found businesses, want to be their own bosses, and just create their own space?
It's a good question. I don't know. It must be a cultural thing. I think it's. Look, I think some of it is learned behaviour. I think, as well, like through generations, if, I know, look at my wife and her grandfather who came here from the Holocaust and had nothing, there was no real option. You sort of had to make it for yourself. And a lot of those people went into actually creating businesses, schmutter businesses, or in the case of my wife's grandfather, shoes, female shoes, so they just did whatever they could to make $1. And a lot of them were very successful. A lot of them might not have been. But I think there was always this view that you actually have to have the control over your own sort of financial outcome. And I'm sure it started before that point, but in my experience from what I've seen now, a lot of it is like a cultural continuation from post-Holocaust. And I actually think people that are educated and well aware of business also understand that the way to actually be financially well off is to own your own business. So I think there's just an element of just being realistic. And Jews have high standards. And if you've got high standards, you need money to fund that lifestyle. And in order to have money to fund that lifestyle, you need to run your own business. So I think there's a little bit of that as well.
Raise the bar, friends.
I think it's a little bit of that. I mean, I think, yes, Jews are like that, but I also think there are other ethnicities.
As I said,
I think there's a lot of sort of those smaller cultures that sort of have to fight the odds that actually are the ones that actually also sometimes perpetuate the risks to go and do it. Because I think a lot of it is around tolerance of risk. And I think Jews tend to be able to sort of make that jump because perhaps at previous times there was nothing to lose. So maybe it continues that. I don't know. For me, it was like, I just really want to do it because I have my vision and I'd love to run it, and I'd like to run it in this particular way. And working for someone else and having to follow their rules and their strategy was fine for a period of time, but it gets to a point where you want the ownership of where things are going to go and how it's going to go. So for me, I'm not sure it's a Jewish thing, but more of like a personal, maybe it's something like a bucket list sort of thing that I always really wanted to run it. but certainly there's influence in the community, and you speak to someone, and there's a lot of chat about creating your own business, and I think it's good. I think it's really good.
Yeah, and also I think there's an element of if you saw that someone else did it, that you can do it too.
Definitely.
Daniel, we have to keep it relatively short here, but two more things. Firstly, the next year or so, what are you planning that you can share with us?
Hopefully you'll hear a bit more of the US accent, so hopefully more of people like you. We have just had our first stock arrive into the US, actually, and going to retail in California over the next couple of weeks, so that's exciting. Awesome. And I think that will require a lot of attention and effort and travel. Yeah. And the markets.
Some frequent flyer miles.
Yeah. I think the hardest part is leaving family and the team here and all that sort of stuff. So we've got some really great people already on board in the US. Yeah. So I think a lot of the decisions now are in terms of we play really nicely in the confectionery category.
Right.
A lot of people ask us and customers ask us, can you do a chocolate? Can you do an ice cream? Where does the brand go beyond this, or do you continue doing what you're currently doing and expand and open into other products? And there are products launching this month that are actually kosher for the first time, which is nice to mention on this channel. Absolutely. So there's a lot of product development. There's a lot of growth internally, even within what we're doing. And then obviously brands typically go into different categories in retail. For us, it's maybe slightly different in terms of we know we've got a really good product. It's about how do we actually take what we've produced and built and give that and provide that to more people in strategic markets like the US, for example. And I think if we can achieve even 5% of what we've done in Australia in the US in the next 12 months, I think I'll be super happy in 12 months.
Excellent, Daniel. And also our last thing, we have a little spinning wheel, friends. Daniel, you want to spin it?
Sure.
Just tell it. Give us a...
Sure.
And wherever the arrow lines, and I'll turn it around in a second, everybody. Here it is. Your Daniel's favorite podcast or book. It's spinning around a little bit right now. You'll have plenty of time to listen or read on a plane.
Yeah. I've got a couple of podcasts. I actually just started listening to... I listen to two mainly. One is The Contrarians, which is my old boss, Adam Schwab and Adia Schiffman. Okay. So two Jews, but really done really nicely in business and really good experience. And that's once a week, and it's like a couple of hours. So that gets me going through the week, and it's stimulating, and I learn a lot. Oh. And then the other one I really like is Diary of a CEO. I'm not sure if you've listened to that, but I'm listening to one at the moment about a neuroscientist talk about sort of mental health and things like that. And I find it really fascinating. It talks about all the hormones in the body and sort of metabolism of foods and things like that sort of affect mood. And I find it really interesting. Clearly, I just like nonfiction stuff. I just like to learn stuff. So those are the two that I'm listening to at the moment.
1% better every day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Daniel, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me.